I never imagined I'd be the kind of guy pacing my living room at 2 a.m., clutching my phone like it was a lifeline to some truth I couldn't bear to discover. But there I was, hands trembling, heart hammering against my ribs as I stared at the screen, reading a notification from an app I'd never installed. I'd been waiting, half asleep, half fumbling through Emily's unlocked phone when a tiny icon blinked in the corner of her home screen. It was innocuous enough, no logo I recognized, but something about it made my chest tighten. I tapped it, almost too afraid to look. That's when my world tilted sideways. The app opened directly to a live feed of our own living room, our couch, our coffee table, my favorite throw blanket draped just how Emily liked it. A timestamp flickered in the upper right corner. My blood ran cold when I realized this wasn't a one-way street. The video was streaming, in real time, to someone else. My blood turned to ice. I slammed the phone shut, but my mind was already racing back. I needed proof. I spent the next hour retracing my steps, my memories. Last week's fight about dinner plans. I'd snapped at her when she ordered takeout again instead of cooking. Before that, the argument about binge-watching our favorite show without me. In every tense exchange, Emily had been glued to her phone, hunched over that little black rectangle, her lips moving in whispers I'd chalked up to calling a friend. But now I saw it for what it was. A secret live stream, broadcast straight into someone else's hands. I slipped back into the bedroom and flipped on the lamp beside her side of the bed, the mattress quilted with her perfume still. Under the nightstand, I spotted something. A small, glossy black circle that didn't belong. A camera lens disguised as a sensor light. My gut dropped. Next, behind a loose tile in our ensuite bathroom, I discovered the real kicker. A tiny microphone module, wired through the wall studs and ending in a tangle of wires that led back into the hall closet. Every argument we'd had in that room, about bills, about loyalty, about her frustration with my long hours at work, had been broadcast live, the audio feeding directly to whoever was on the other end. I sat on the edge of the tub, head in my hands, trying to make sense of it. How long had this been going on? Who was watching? I remembered Emily's hushed giggles, her flushed cheeks when she thought I wasn't looking. I remembered her excuses. I'm just checking messages. It's my sister from college. I like to keep up with my group chat. But there'd been too many late nights online, too many mid-argument silences when she would slip her phone under her pillow and start typing. My name is Alex, and I thought I knew Emily better than anyone in the world. We'd met 3 years ago at a summer cookout, her laugh cut through the clatter of burgers grilling and guests chattering by the pool. She had these big blue eyes that seemed to shine even in the dusk, and she invited me to help her flip corn on the cob. I spilled half of the kernels, she laughed, and I was hooked. Our first date was a picnic in Central Park. I brought sandwiches, she brought a homemade peach pie. We talked until the streetlights flickered on, and by the time we shared that first, hesitant kiss, everything else in the world had gone quiet. By the time she moved into my Brooklyn apartment, I was already planning our life together. We picked out furniture on weekends, binge-watched the entire run of Friends twice, and talked about our future, kids, travel, maybe a house upstate. I pictured her in a white dress, me fumbling with the cufflinks on my tux. But somewhere along the way, reality bent. I was working 50-hour weeks writing code for a startup, and she was pulling extra shifts at the cafe to pay off her student loans. We drifted. I came home exhausted. She was tired too. We fought, sure, but I never thought she'd betray me like this. I decided I needed answers. I reinstalled the mystery app on my own phone, assuming it would still let me stream. Within seconds, I was watching a live feed of the bedroom. Emily was there, scrolling through Instagram, oblivious to the camera tucked inside our bedroom smoke detector. I watched her eyes flicker with something. Was it guilt or excitement? She tapped on a message, fingers dancing over the screen, and her lips curved into a sly smile. A minute later, she stood, stretched, and headed for the bathroom. I followed the feed through the adjoining wall and waited. In the bathroom mirror, she paused, lifted her hair to hide the lens I'd found earlier, and spoke directly to the camera. "You missed what he said, didn't you?" Her voice was low, trembling with adrenaline. "He calls me selfish, but he's the one who never has time for me." She sighed dramatically, as if performing on a stage. I'm sorry you had to hear that, babe, but it's true. He just doesn't get it. Then she whispered something I couldn't make out, and ending with a soft laugh, she tapped the app's end stream button. My stomach twisted into knots. She was narrating our fights, broadcasting them like some personal drama series for her lover, feeding him every painful reaction, every angry glare, every "you don't love me like you used to." It wasn't enough to talk to someone. She needed an audience. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered to the tile floor. I pressed my forehead against the mirror, staring at my own reflection. Bloodshot eyes, pale skin, a man whose life had been exposed as a performance piece for someone else's entertainment. And I realized I didn't just want answers. I needed to confront her. I needed to see the person behind the smile that had once lit up my world. I took a shaky breath, wiped my hands on my jeans, and edged toward the door. Soon, I'd face Emily with the truth. I'd own every second of my rage, my heartbreak, my disbelief. But first, I had to be sure I was ready to live with the fallout. I stepped into the bedroom like a man moving through molasses, every step weighed down by dread. Emily sat on the edge of our bed, phone clutched in her hand, eyes widening when she saw me in the doorway. The low lamp cast long shadows across her face, and for a second I thought I saw regret flicker there. But then it was gone, replaced by a mask of innocence. "Alex," she said, voice trembling. I could almost believe she was startled to see me home early, like I'd popped in unannounced with flowers. In my mind, I replayed all the moments I'd thought she was just texting. During our arguments, her neat thumbnails dancing across the screen as she typed, her lips moving in the dark, her eyes sliding shut to savor some unseen thrill. I raised the phone. The feed was still open, our room on display, the timestamp ticking. "What is this, Em?" I kept my voice low, steady, the calm before some kind of tempest. "Why is our bedroom live streaming to your phone?" Her jaw clenched. "I don't know what you're talking about." I swiped to open the app and hit replay. The video buffered, revealing our fight from 2 nights ago. She was shouting at me about forgetting our anniversary dinner plans. I was accusing her of brushing me off because of work. She'd been pacing back and forth, eyes darting to the phone she held. There it was, our fight amplified, framed for an unseen viewer. Her face paled. "Alex, I can explain." "Save it." My heart throbbed in my ears. "Remember that argument in the bathroom last week? Turns out it wasn't just between us." I held up a small round mic cover I'd removed from behind the tile, half glossy, half dusty. "You installed this to feed someone else every filthy detail." She swallowed. Her voice faltered. "You really saw that?" "I saw everything." I dropped the mic cover onto the bed. It landed with a hollow clink that sounded like the final nail in our marriage coffin. "Emily, who is he?" She stayed silent for a beat too long. When she finally spoke, it was in a whisper. "I didn't plan for you to find out this way." She put her phone down and looked at me, tears brimming. "His name is Daniel." My stomach lurched. Daniel, that name fit the type. A smooth talker, a listener of secrets. I thought back to the few times I'd run into Emily's coker Daniel at her cafe. Always polite, always friendly, and always watching her with that intensity that made you uncomfortable. I closed the distance and picked up her phone. The chat thread was open. "Emily, Daniel. He's at it again, can't believe he." And Daniel's reply, "Keep going, I want to hear how he reacts." Beneath that, the timestamp, 2:13 a.m., exactly when I'd stumbled on the app. I pressed play on the audio recording stored in the app's archives. Emily's voice echoed, "You never listen. You say you love me, but you're never here." Then my voice rising in frustration. Then her laughter, soft, triumphant. "You see that, babe? He's actually losing it." My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. "This isn't just cheating," I whispered. "It's humiliation." She looked down at the carpet, tracing patterns with the toe of her slipper. "I was lonely, Alex." The single truth, stripped of excuses, hung in the air. "You were always working. I felt invisible." I closed my eyes, recalling our last vacation, her half-hearted smiles as I sat in front of my laptop to finish one more feature, her polite nods when I suggested I'd just go check on a bug. She'd been there physically, but my mind had drifted to deadlines and server crashes. I'd been a ghost in my own life, and she'd reached for something, someone who would pay attention. "How long?" I managed to say. "A few months." She met my gaze at last, eyes shiny, desperate. Daniel was kind, he listened, he made me feel seen. The apartment felt smaller. I could practically hear the walls sigh, mourning the trust that had lived within them. I sank onto the bed beside her, every muscle aching with grief. "And all this time," I said, "while you were live streaming our fights, you were pretending to be my wife to him?" She nodded. I told him about everything. "You know that night I cried after you missed our anniversary? I live streamed it as soon as you left. I thought, God, I thought he would comfort me, but he just watched." My throat tightened. "You let him watch me at my worst. You let him laugh at my pain." Tears fell down Emily's cheeks. "I know, I'm sorry." But sorry didn't begin to cut it. Sorry was a word, and I was undone. My fingers trembled as they traced the familiar grooves of the duvet. I pictured our future unraveling, weddings I'd never attend, children he'd never meet. Everything we planned was just code waiting to be deleted. I stood up abruptly. "I need air." My legs felt like rubber as I crossed the room. I grabbed my coat from the closet, avoiding her gaze. "I'm going out." She tried to reach for my arm, but I stepped back. "No, not tonight." Outside, the Brooklyn air slammed into me. A mix of diesel fumes, hot pretzel stands, the distant echo of late-night trains. I walked without direction, hands in pockets, head pounding. Every step rattled the fragile equilibrium I'd built over 3 years. I passed the corner bodega where we used to pick up latte after our morning runs. The barista gave me a sympathetic nod, but I couldn't bring myself to look up. I realized I needed someone on my side, someone who'd been there before it all fell apart. I ducked into a 24-hour diner and slid into a booth under the flickering neon. The waitress brought me coffee without asking. Black, no sugar, the way I liked it before Emily taught me to add cinnamon. I stared at the mug and felt like I was looking at someone else's life. Then I did something I'd avoided. I called my best friend Jason. He answered on the first ring, groggy. "Dude, it's 2:30 in the morning." "I need you," I said, voice cracking. "Bring me beer and come to my place. Trust me." He groaned, but promised he'd be there. I hung up and stared into the coffee steam rising like a wisp of my regrets. The city outside went on. Taxis honked, sirens wailed, life spun forward while mine was stuck, rewinding back to every fight, every secret tap of Emily's phone, every moment I could have seen the signs, but chose not to look. I stayed at the diner until Jason showed up 2 hours later, bleary-eyed and carrying a six-pack. He looked at me, terrible sympathy in his blue eyes. "Man, what happened?" I took a deep breath. "I just found out everything." And I told him. Every hidden camera, every live stream, every word Emily had shared with Daniel. With each sentence, tears leaked from my eyes, and I realized something awful. This was the kind of betrayal that cut to your soul. Jason put a hand on my shoulder. "I'm here, man. We'll figure this out." But I wasn't sure there was a way back. Not from this. And yet, even as my heart shattered beside that vinyl booth, I knew I had to try. To confront Emily again. To demand the truth in its fullest form. To decide whether forgiveness could exist after such a facade. Tomorrow, I promised myself, I'd go home and look her in the eyes. But tonight, I just sat there, listening to the hiss of the diner coffee machine, feeling every piece of the life I thought I had crumble into dust. Jason half carried me back to my apartment as dawn's pale light seeped through the blinds. I felt hollow, like a ghost stumbling through the remnants of a life someone else had built. Inside, the apartment felt cold. The bedroom door still ajar, the covers rumpled where Emily had slept alone for the first time in months. I could almost see her silhouette in the faint glow, waiting for me to knock, waiting for me to say something that might mend the tear in our marriage. But I didn't knock. I dropped my keys on the console and sank onto the couch, the weight of the past night pressing every muscle flat. Jason leaned against the back of the couch, balancing 2 lukewarm beers on the coffee table. He passed me one and sat beside me, silent. I took a sip, bitter and metallic, and stared at the hidden camera and the smoke detector above the window, the microphone cover still lying on the nightstand like an accusation. "You ever think," Jason said quietly, "that she might have been streaming more than just your fights?" His voice was gentle, but the question cut deeper than any fight we'd ever had. I closed my eyes. "What do you mean?" He tilted his head toward the hallway, toward the locked closet, where the wiring for the mic still dangled. "What if she streamed everything? Your wedding video, Your morning talks, you're making pancakes on Saturdays? He shrugged, guilt flickering in his eyes. Maybe she wanted an audience for the good stuff too. I pictured our wedding, the sun setting behind us in that tiny chapel, our families gathered, Emily's cheeks flushed with joy. If that had been streaming live to someone named Daniel, that would be the cruelest betrayal of all. The thought tightened my chest. I don't want to know. Jason nodded, understanding. Whatever you do next, you need to be sure you're doing it for you, not for anyone else. He stood up and clapped me on the shoulder. I'm gonna head out, but I'll be back later, okay? Whatever you need. I watched him leave, his silhouette swallowed by the hallway light. Alone again? I traced the grain of the coffee table, remembering Emily's laugh echoing off these walls, our lazy movie nights, the way she'd curl up against me during thunderstorms. Was any of it real? Or was it all staged for a hidden camera, a twisted show I'd unwittingly starred in? I needed clarity. I needed to see her, to hear her say it aloud. Why? When the apartment was silent, I reached for my phone and called in sick. My voice cracked. The receptionist on the other end asked if I was okay. I lied and hung up. Then I called Emily's number. It rang once, twice, and went to voicemail. Alex? Her recorded voice sounded distant, cautious. Sorry I missed you. I hung up before she finished. I paced each lap around the living room, fueling a knot in my stomach. I felt like an animal cornered, desperate for escape but unsure where safety lay. Finally, I grabbed my coat and left without thought, heading to the cafe where she'd worked part-time. Maybe seeing her among the morning rush would offer some hint of the woman I'd fallen in love with. The bell chimed overhead as I stepped inside. The cafe was busy but not crowded, the morning's first wave. I spotted Emily behind the counter. Apron tied at her waist, hair pulled back in a careless ponytail. She looked up, saw me, and froze. The line grew behind me as she swallowed. She wiped her hands on her apron, walked around the counter, and for a moment I thought she was going to run. Instead, she stepped closer, into the tiny space between us. What are you doing here? She whispered, voice shaking. I came to talk. I folded my arms, trying to keep my voice steady. In private. She nodded, looking around like she might bolt for the back door. I motioned toward a small table by the window. We sat facing each other, the hum of espresso machines and morning chatter humming around us. A barista set down 2 lattes without asking. Emily pushed hers away. I picked it up, pretending to sip. Why, Emily? I asked. Why, Daniel? Why hide cameras in our home? Her fingers twisted in her lap. I wasn't thinking straight. I felt so alone. And he listened. Her eyes brimmed with tears, sad, pleading. It started as comfort. He told me he loved my mind, my voice. He wanted to hear my side of things. I thought it was harmless. Harmless, I echoed. You turned our private life into a live show. Every fight we had, you made it his entertainment. My voice cracked. You used me. She flinched, pain in her expression. I know, she whispered. I know I hurt you. I never meant for it to go this far. She took a shaky breath. When I saw you helping Jason last night, I realized I hate what I became. I missed you, Alex. I missed us. I stared at her, searching for the girl with the big blue eyes, the laugh that cut through a crowded room. She was there, eyes red, voice trembling, but I wasn't sure I could trust her anymore. Can you promise me you'll stop talking to him? Delete the app? Remove the cameras? Everything? She nodded so hard her ponytail swung. I will, I swear. I let out a slow breath. A part of me wanted to believe her, to hold her hand and remember the first time she laughed at my stupid jokes. But another part of me recoiled, terrified of another betrayal, another hidden shot fired behind my back. I need time, I said finally, voice low. I can't just go back to how things were. Her lips trembled. I understand. She reached for my hand, just a hint of touch. I'll do whatever it takes. I pulled my hand away and stood. The line at the counter shifted. Patrons glanced our way. I have to go back to work, I said. We'll talk later. I left without looking back. Outside, the sun was higher now, promising a day unmade by last night's revelations. I felt bruised but oddly light, as if admitting the truth freed part of me. The road ahead was uncertain. Maybe repair was possible, maybe not. But at least the cameras were gone. For the first time in months, I walked forward without looking over my shoulder, determined to rebuild something, whether with Emily or without her, brick by honest brick. By the time evening rolled around, Brooklyn's streets had shed the sharp glare of afternoon and softened into a warm, amber glow. I found myself standing outside our apartment building, keys in hand, heart pounding like a war drum. I'd spent the entire day in a haze, trying to code through bugs at the office, but every line of JavaScript felt meaningless, because no deploy button could fix what had broken at home. I knew Emily would be waiting behind that door, bracing herself for whatever came next. Inside, the apartment felt different. The hidden camera was gone from the smoke detector. The twisted wires had disappeared from the bathroom wall. The place looked almost like it used to, but the air carried tension, a brittle hush. Emily sat at the kitchen table, a single lamp casting long shadows around her. She'd made pasta, but the sauce sat congealing in the pan on the stove. Her shoulders slumped, shoulders she'd once lifted with laughter. "Hey." My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. She looked up, blinking away tears. "Hey." I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, folding my arms. My mind raced through everything I wanted to say, accusations, questions, confessions of my own failures. But instead, I felt emptier than when I'd left. "I didn't come home earlier," she whispered, voice cracking. "I was scared." "Tonight I wanted to know," I said, stepping forward. "Not because I think we can just go back to normal, but because I need to see you own it." She nodded and stood, wiping her palms on her jeans. "I know." She took a deep breath. "I've deleted the app, removed every trace. I even uninstalled all social media. I want to prove I'm doing this for us, not for Daniel." "Actions speak louder than words," I said. She set a plate in front of me, pasta twirled with fresh basil, and sank into the chair across from me. "I've signed us up for couples therapy," she blurted out. "We start next week." I stared at her, fork hovering. I hadn't expected that. Therapy felt like a gamble, but maybe I wasn't sure I had anything left to lose. "Why?" I asked. "Because I want us to understand why this happened," she said, eyes glistening. "I want to fix it if we can, for your sake, for mine." I looked at the plate, tasting the sauce's sweetness and bitterness, the way the cheese clung in gooey strings. I realized I couldn't eat, not yet. I stood abruptly. "I'm going out for air." She reached for me, panic in her eyes. "Alex." I shook her hand off gently. "I need space." Outside, the evening air was crisp, carrying the scent of rain that hadn't yet fallen. I wandered down to the river promenade, where joggers ran under lampposts and couples strolled arm in arm, laughing. I felt like an interloper in someone else's movie, cut from the scene I once played lead in. My phone buzzed with a message. I froze. It was from an unknown number. "I know what you're doing." "Nice try hiding." My chest tightened. "Daniel." His threat was a faint echo through my speaker. I stared at my reflection in the dark screen. Hollow eyes, stubble on my chin, the face of someone whose trust had been seared away. I felt anger flare, toward Daniel for taunting me, but also toward Emily for letting him in. I deleted the message without reading more. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of knowing he could rattle me. Instead, I dialed her number. It rang twice, then voicemail. I hung up. Even as I walked back to the apartment, I realized boundaries weren't enough. I needed a plan. When I returned, Emily was sitting on the couch, a stack of self-help books at her feet. The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, Hold Me Tight, attached. She looked up, hopeful and terrified. "I know you got a message," she said softly. I blocked Daniel's number and contacted the app company, asked them to terminate his account. I sank beside her, exhaustion crashing over me. "He still knows I know." She slid closer and took my hand. Her skin was warm. "Then let's give him nothing. No reaction. We focus on us." I closed my eyes and felt the weight of her words. For the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel so alone. Not entirely. I let her hand hold mine as I whispered, "I'm scared, Em. Scared this is who we've become." She squeezed my fingers. "Then let's choose who we want to be." We sat there in near silence. 2 broken pieces clasped together on the couch, the city muffled beyond the windows. I didn't know where this path would lead, toward healing or final fracture, but I knew this: the next move belonged to both of us, and at least now, we were choosing it together. The next morning dawned gray and quiet, the kind of morning that makes you feel like the world is still holding its breath. I woke on the couch, sprawled under an afghan, my phone buzzing insistently in my pocket. I stared at the ceiling, head pounding, and wondered how many times I'd felt this raw knot in my chest over the past week. Finally, I rolled over, snatched up the phone, and saw Emily's name lighting up the screen. "Alex, are you up? Therapy at noon." I ran a hand through my hair and sat up, knees aching from sleeping on the couch. I remembered the promise we'd made last night. To try. We'd signed up for couples therapy with Dr. Harrington, a small practice in Park Slope that specialized in digital-era betrayals and rebuilding trust after infidelity. At least that's what her website said. I'd lied to my boss again, explained that I needed a medical appointment, and cleared the afternoon. I needed to see Emily, really see her, and figure out if any part of us could survive. By the time I reached the subway platform, the city was already thudding with life. Commuters jostled for space, earbuds in place, eyes on their screens. I felt like a man carrying a secret, a confession I wasn't ready to voice. Emily texted me a blue heart emoji and the address. I tucked my phone away and let the train carry me uptown. Dr. Harrington's office was warm, painted pale green, with 2 armchairs facing a low table. A Zen sand garden sat in the corner, half raked as if waiting for patience to smooth its lines. We sat in those chairs, Emily on the left, me on the right, the doctor on a leather stool across from us. Her eyes were kind but direct. "Alex, Emily," she began, "I know you've been through a lot this week. Before we talk about cameras and streaming, let's remember why you came together in the first place." She offered us both fresh tissues. "Tell me about a moment you shared before all this chaos." Emily closed her eyes and inhaled. "We used to cook together on Sundays," she said softly. "We'd pick a new recipe. Gnocchi, paella, homemade sushi. We'd laugh when I dropped flour everywhere and you'd try to flip the pan like you saw on TV. She glanced at me, and for a moment I saw the Emily I fell in love with. Messy apron, flour dust on her nose, that wide grin. I smiled, despite myself. "We burnt risotto so many times," I added. "But we'd eat it anyway, right? Complement each other's efforts. We were a team." Dr. Harrington nodded. "Good. Now, let's explore how you drifted apart. Emily, can you tell Alex how you felt leading up to those moments with Daniel?" Emily swallowed, her fingers twisting the edge of her shirt. "I was lonely," she began. "When we were cooking, you were there. But during the week, it was emails, conference calls, debugging code. I'd come home to an empty apartment or you'd be in the guest room, laptop open. I started feeling like a roommate, not a partner." She took a breath, met my eyes. Daniel paid attention. He asked me about my day, my dreams, and he listened when I talked about you, even though it was always complaints. She gave a small, rueful shake of her head. I hate that I did it, but I thought it was harmless venting. Dr. Harrington intervened gently. "Emily, you vented to someone who encouraged your resentment. Alex, how did his role in your marriage contribute to that distance?" I winced. "I get it. I worked too much. I buried myself in the startup. I thought I was doing it for us, making a future. But I missed the present." I failed to notice Emily felt unseen. I looked at her, ashamed. "I deserve blame for creating that opening, even though I don't deserve what you did." Therapy lasted an hour, peeling back layers of resentment and unmet needs. It hurt like hell, every admission a fresh sting, but also felt strangely cathartic. By the end, Dr. Harrington gave us homework. 1 hour of uninterrupted time together each day, no phones, no work talk, just us and something to build, like a puzzle or a recipe. Afterwards, we walked back to the subway hand in hand, awkward but real. The space between us felt different, like a crack filled with gold rather than cement. I wasn't fixed, and she wasn't forgiven, but we were moving towards something. That evening, at home, we cleared the dining table and set up an old jigsaw puzzle that had been gathering dust. We spread the pieces out, sorted by color, and worked side by side. Emily smiled when a corner piece clicked, and I laughed when I realized I'd force-fitted a wrong piece 3 times. No cameras. No apps. Just the 2 of us, neon city lights glittering through the window. But just as hope began to bloom, my phone buzzed again. Another message from an unknown number. My heart sank. I opened it and saw a single line. "Nice puzzle. But is she making that face for me?" Below, an old screenshot of Emily's profile picture, cropped to eliminate backgrounds, her eyes fixed on her computer screen. No name, no sender info. I stared at the image, stomach lurching. Emily saw my face go pale. "It's him," I whispered, tossing the phone onto the table. "Daniel's back." She looked down, body going rigid. I thought blocking him was enough. I did too, I said. I picked up the phone. We'll report this. Get a restraining order if we have to. You're my wife, not his entertainment. She reached for my hand. Thank you for that, for believing in me enough to fight. I took a steadying breath, brushed a strand of hair from her face. We're in this together. I lifted the puzzle piece I'd just found. Now let's finish this. As we clicked pieces into place, the threat still lingered, but so did something stronger. A choice to rebuild trust, to guard our private moments fiercely, and to protect the life we wanted to craft unfiltered, just for us. And for the first time in days, I believed we might actually do it. The morning after our puzzle night, Brooklyn felt heavier, as though each brownstone and fire escape carried the weight of my secret dread. I woke in the bedroom for the first time in days, our bed stripped of the invasion of wires and lenses, yet it still felt unfamiliar, like a borrowed space. Emily was already gone. A sticky note on the nightstand said she'd left coffee on the counter and run an errand for therapy materials. I dressed in silence, drank the bitter coffee, and wondered if this fragile truce could hold. By mid-morning, my phone buzzed again with that anonymous harassment. A taunting clip, Emily's voice from one of our old video calls, cropped so all I saw were her lips forming words I could no longer trust. The accompanying message. Miss this? I felt anger flare, but also a strange protectiveness. This was my fight now too. I blocked every unknown number I could and searched online for digital harassment help. There were forums, legal resources, how to trace a stalker guides. I printed out pages, feeling like a detective gathering evidence rather than a boyfriend nursing a wounded heart. When Emily returned, I was at the laptop in the living room. Her eyes widened when she saw the scattered printouts, screenshots of the messages, links to stalking laws in New York, how to file a restraining order. You've been busy, she murmured. I'm not letting him pick at you anymore. I said, closing the laptop. We'll go to the precinct if we have to. She touched my arm, relief and guilt mingling on her face. Thank you. By afternoon, we had drafted an email to the streaming app company, demanding Daniel's account be disabled and our data deleted. We attached recordings of his threats as evidence of harassment. Emily wrote the subject line. My hands hovered over the send button. When I finally clicked send, it felt like lifting a brick off my chest, though the weight of betrayal still pressed down. That evening we cooked again, this time salmon with cilantro lime butter and roasted asparagus. There were no cameras, but plenty of laughter at my botched pan-sear. Emily told me a story about her grandmother's garden in Ohio, and I shared a ridiculous pun I'd invented at work. For a moment, I forgot about Daniel, the messages, the therapy homework waiting on the table. It was like coming up for air after weeks underwater. Therapy the next day honed in on digital boundaries. Dr. Harrington listened as we described the harassment texts. One of the scariest things about technology, she said, is how it can turn intimacy into a weapon. She guided us through setting phone locks, two-factor authentication, and safe words to pause any conversation that felt unsafe. We practiced telling each other when we needed distance, how to check in without spying, how to rebuild privacy without going back to old habits of withdrawal. Over the next week, each evening brought its own struggle. Sometimes a late-night message would slip through filters. Other nights, the weight of therapy homework, expressing needs, naming hurts, felt heavier than any live stream could be. But each morning I found Emily's note on the table. Let's do the breathing exercise together. Coffee at 8? I'm proud of you. Small acts, gentle reminders that we were a team again. By the second weekend, I accepted an invitation from Jason to join him and a couple of old college friends at a rooftop bar in Manhattan. I hesitated, fear of leaving Emily alone, but she squeezed my hand. Go, she said, and have fun. I'll be okay. I kissed her forehead and walked out into the humid June evening, carrying her faith with me. At the bar, the wind off the Hudson felt like freedom. Jason and I drank a round of IPAs and talked about anything but betrayals and therapy. I laughed more in that hour than I had in months, feeling something like my old self flicker back to life. Still, every time my phone buzzed, momentary panic before discovering it was just a group chat invite, I realized how scarred my reflexes had become. That night I came home to find the lock on our front door changed. Emily was downstairs in the kitchen, hair tied back, chopping garlic for homemade pizza. "I thought it helped me feel safer," she said, nodding at the new deadbolt. "Maybe we should have done this sooner." I slid my arms around her waist, beginning at the nape of her neck, inhaled the scent of basil and honeysuckle. "It does." As we slid the dough onto the stone in the oven, the apartment filled with warmth. We sat at the counter, sliced heirloom tomatoes, sprinkled cheese, and talked about our dream trip to the Pacific Northwest. Hiking trails, kayaking glacial lakes, visiting a lavender farm in Oregon. For once, we were planning something pure. No hidden cameras, no secret audiences, just two people choosing to move forward together. When the pizza emerged, golden and bubbling, we ate in companionable silence, shoulders brushing. The last threat text had finally stopped, and Daniel's account was terminated by the app company. We'd filed a report with the precinct. No charges yet, but a paper trail in place. More importantly, we'd built new boundaries, stronger communication patterns, and a shared resolve not to let technology distort our love again. Late that night, we curled up on the couch under a soft throw, the city lights flickering beyond the window like distant stars. I pressed my forehead to Emily's, closed my eyes, and felt her steady breath. We didn't need an audience to validate our pain or our joy. We only needed each other, warts, scars, and all, to write the next chapter ourselves. And in that quiet moment, I finally believed we could. That evening, when the oven timer beeped and our pizza crust shimmered golden, I realized how much had changed and how much had stayed the same. Emily and I settled on the couch with our slices, the living room dim except for the city lights winking through the window. No cameras, no apps, just the two of us and the hum of a world that once felt too big to share. Weeks of therapy had taught us that trust isn't rebuilt overnight. It's forged in small, deliberate choices. That's why when my phone buzzed again, I almost jumped. Another message from a blocked number. "Still together? How sweet." My heart lurched, but instead of panic or rage, I felt resolve. I showed the text to Emily. She leaned in, placing a hand on mine. "Let me handle this," she said softly. She drafted an email to the app company, again, with legal documents attached, including our therapy notes and evidence of harassment. We copied the police detective on duty. Then, together, we crafted a response on social media, warning fellow users about the hidden stream feature and urging privacy protections. It was the first time we'd taken a public stand, transforming our wounded story into a warning for others. Later that night, we sat side by side on the bed. Our bed, finally free of smoke detector cameras, scrolling through community comments. Messages of support poured in. "Stay strong. Thank you for speaking out. My partner and I are going to lock down our apartment." We traded quiet smiles. For the first time in months, betrayal felt like a catalyst for something better. Something bigger than just us. A fortnight later, there was a court date. We sat together in the small, fluorescent-lit courtroom as the judge reviewed our restraining order petition against Daniel. When the gavel fell in our favor, prohibiting him from contacting us or visiting within a mile of our home, I felt a strange sense of release. It wasn't revenge, it was closure. Outside the courthouse, Emily closed her eyes and leaned her head on my shoulder. I wrapped an arm around her and let the tears come, tears not of heartbreak, but of relief and determination. At home, we celebrated quietly. Leftover pizza for dinner, a bottle of cheap champagne, and a marathon of our favorite show, The Office, with popcorn and blankets. We laughed at Jim's pranks and Pam's warm smile, recognizing in their oddball office family the simple joys we'd almost forgotten. Connection without pretense, shared laughter without an audience. Over the next month, our 1 hour together rule became a ritual. We discovered a late-night taco truck down the street and made it our Sunday date. We returned to the community garden in Park Slope, planting lavender in memory of the rugged trials we'd endured. One Saturday morning, we even built a small bookshelf for our growing library, competing to see who could line up hardcover spines most neatly. It was domestic bliss in its purest form, unremarkable to anyone else, but revolutionary to us. Our final therapy session ended with Dr. Harrington's words ringing in my ears. "You've survived surveillance, dishonesty, and harassment. Now you have to survive one another's imperfections." We hugged her goodbye, Solidarity coursing through us, knowing the hardest tests were behind, but also that life would continue to throw curveballs. On a Sunday afternoon, I surprised Emily with plane tickets, 2 seats to Seattle in 3 months. I'd planned a road trip up the Pacific Coast Highway, stopping at redwood groves, bakery cafes, and that lavender farm she'd mentioned. She stared at the glossy tickets, mouth agape, tears welling up again. "You remembered," she whispered. "I remembered everything," I said, kissing her forehead, "starting with our first picnic in Central Park and building up to this next adventure." She smiled, that easy, glowing smile that first made me fall in love. "Let's do it," she said. "Let's write our story, with no cameras, no apps, just us." I held her hand tightly. In that moment, I knew our story wasn't defined by betrayal or hidden broadcasts. It was defined by the choice we made, day after day, to face our fears and choose each other. And for me, that was the most powerful narrative of all.